What's going on, my friends, my family, my fellow gamers? It's your only friend, these YouTube streets, PorterRock77, back with another video. And let's get right to it and let's talk. Is Sony arrogant, and will this hurt the PlayStation 5 brand for the next generation of consoles? Now, if you've been paying attention, maybe over the last couple of weeks or so, maybe not too much into it, but there's a growing narrative and concern, depending how you want to look at it, of Sony becoming arrogant due to certain recent events and them potentially screwing up the next gen because of it. Let's look at a couple of things that people are using to cover. Number one, Sony not being part of E3. Number two, Sony not having a PlayStation experience for 2018, right? And number three, Sony not releasing dates for the big upcoming exclusives that they have, which people are now making assumptions or spreading the narrative that these games are being withheld for the release of the PlayStation 5 to be sold as, system sellers for the platform. And then on top of all that, Microsoft making a lot of headway with the narrative, primarily talking about studio acquisitions and how they're building up their first-party platform studios, right? So let's look at all those points. Are all those points truly signs that Sony's arrogant, right? Let's start with them not having a PlayStation experience and them not attending Sony's E3. Now, when I heard primarily not so much PlayStation experience, but mostly they're not going to be at Sony E3, I was disappointed. I have a video on that, so you can check it out. It's how I feel about Sony not attending Sony E3. I do have concerns about that. I am kind of, I don't want to use the word upset. Disappointed is a better word. I am disappointed that they're not going to be there. They're one of the big three when it comes to console manufacturers. And they've been at E3 for, I think it was 24 years. And E3 is a great event for us gamers. It's an event that we spend the week talking about games, looking at a whole bunch of, keynote speeches, lots of videos, lots of new infos, gameplay, all that stuff. It's a great time. It's our Super Bowl. It's our NBA All-Star Weekend. And the fact that, a huge force in gaming won't be there is disappointing, not just as me being a PlayStation fan, but also as a fan in gaming and such a big fan of the E3 event. But with that said, if you have noticed the last couple of years, especially the most recent, gamers are now not in the mood to listen to big-time events if you don't really have anything to say. I know last year at Sony's E3, a lot of people didn't like it, despite the fact that I kind of liked it because I got to see gameplay on the games I'm looking forward to, which we didn't have gameplay before. So that was the reason why I liked it. I got to see gameplay of the exclusives, A lot of people didn't care for that. A lot of people wanted big new announcements, new IPs, and they didn't really get that from Sony E3. So some people found Sony's E3 a disappointment, right? Prior to that, PSX 2017, even I found that a disappointment. There was no big news at all really out of that. So a lot of people found that disappointing. This past E3, a lot of people didn't like EA's E3. And then BlizzCon happened for Blizzard. That was a disaster for them, And then Microsoft had their XO18 event again. Waste of time for many people, didn't do Microsoft any favors. So what trends are we seeing here? We're seeing trends that if you have a big show, but you don't come out with big news, it's not going to look good on you, And Sony is an entertainment company. They're not just into technology. They are also into entertainment. They have a music division. They have a movie division. So they kind of know, they have the people to know when, advertisements and stuff like that and media is not going their way. They learn real quick and they adapt real quick. So Sony not having a PSX 18 and E3 2019 shows that whatever they're trying to do is not ready for that show. And if it's not ready for their shows, then don't have a show at all, which I could appreciate that. Don't waste people's time if you're not going to show anything. With that said, a lot of people are confusing them not ready to show something with not having anything at all to show, which I disagree. Just because Sony, this whole gen, they haven't been very talkative about what they're gonna do day by day like Microsoft. Microsoft is always, especially Phil Spencer, he's always saying something. He's always saying something. Oh, we're going to Japan tomorrow. He said that like 5 years in a row, and we didn't see anything come from it. 2014, oh, we got $1 billion in games, and we really didn't see the games. They're always talking about something. They're always talking, and people are just still waiting for something. Sony doesn't really do that. They don't really go on Twitter. They don't really provide updates. Their employees don't hang out with people and stuff like that. They just stay to themselves, and then when it's time to show something, they show it. Until then, they play things close to the chest, and I appreciate that, because don't just talk to talk. If you got something to say, then say it. If you don't, then do what you got to do. Next big narrative is release dates. I don't understand this narrative anymore because it failed those who tried to use it already. In 2017, because Sony wasn't releasing release dates for God of War, SpiderMan, Detroit Become Human, and of course the remaining games, everybody was saying all these games are going to be 2019, 2020, 2021, PlayStation 5, We saw Sony E3 2017. They didn't release dates for God of War, Spider-Man, Detroit, and so on. So people use the narrative, these games are 2020, PlayStation 5. Gamescom came by, still no release dates. 2017 Paris Games Week, they announced Ghost of Tsushima there, so we got a new AAA IP, but still no release dates on God of War, Spider-Man. So again, people continued with, these are PlayStation 5 launch games. Then the final show was PlayStation Experience 2017. We got a little bit of gameplay of Detroit, but no release date. And then we didn't get anything out of Spider-Man God of War. So again, we ended off 2017, and people up and down creating a narrative. These games ain't coming out in 2018. That's it. Sony's dry. These games are 2020 PlayStation 5 launch games. Then what happens when we kicked off 2018? Right off the bat in January, the PlayStation blog came out with the release date for God of War. And then immediately, as soon as that came out, now we started realizing, now you started to see the media campaign. As soon as PlayStation blog said, hey, April whatever is when God of War's coming out, they're like the same day or the very next day, Game Informer came out, hey, next month's issue is God of War, and over the next couple of weeks we're going to be talking about God of War Blowout, God of War podcast, God of War this, we're going to have Corey Barlog on this date, we're going to do this on that day, right? Then maybe like a couple of weeks later, a God of War commercial, the new trailer was live and present at the Golden State Warriors game in the middle of their halftime, So what did we learn from that? Well, let me step ahead. Couple of weeks later in April, Sony announces the Spider-Man release date. And then from there, again, another media blitz, another magazine article, stuff like that. Like a month or two later, whatever. So trains going up and down New York City, London, there's buses, whatever. Huge media campaign, huge media blitz, all the works and whistles for that game, right? So what did we learn from that? Or what can we learn from that? These things, these media campaigns and all stuff like that, they don't come out of thin air. All this stuff was being planned. The logistics, the money, the agreements, I mean, to have a New York City train completely painted specifically for Spider-Man, that's coordination with the city of New York plus the Mass Transit Authority, Sony working, wheeling and dealing, And then once they did the contracts or whatever, they hired somebody to actually paint the train. And not only did they paint the train, none of us knew about it. That's what's crazy. That whole, you know what that is, to paint that whole train, and nobody had any idea that was happening? We had no leaks, no nothing. So that thing was straight under hush-hush. Things like that don't happen overnight, The big media blitz with Game Informer, and already the plan week to week, unveilings and conversations and podcasts and reveals and conversation, all that stuff. It was already planned by Game Informer week after week after week up until the game launch. Again, this is all pre-planned. So while everybody throughout 2017 was like, God of War's not coming out until 2020, it's a PlayStation 5 game, Spider-Man's not going to be a 2018 game, it's a 2019 or 2020 PlayStation 5. While everybody's saying these narratives, because Sony's not saying anything in 2017 about release dates, guess what they were doing? They weren't on Twitter talking. They weren't doing none of that mess. They were out there with the sleeves rolled up, getting in these contracts, talking to who they need to talk, talking to New York City, talking to the NBA with the Golden State Warriors, getting the train done, talking to Game Informer, planning out how they're going to trickle down information all the way up into release. They were doing all these things in the cut, and they didn't say a damn word, And that's the point I'm trying to say. Don't confuse Sony's lack of communication day by day with them not doing nothing. We have consistently seen them demonstrate that despite saying anything, they are constantly working. Understand this. PlayStation is their number one brand. It's their number one division. It's their number one priority. I don't think Sony's going to be arrogant anymore, especially when they realize this is their cradle. This is their baby. This is the heart of the company. Sure, maybe the other sectors companies, are having a good, successful year. I don't know. To be honest, I don't really care because I don't track any of the sectors of Sony. I'm not a Sony fan as in terms of the company and TVs and all that stuff. I just like PlayStation. I'm a PlayStation fan. Sony, it doesn't really matter. If they make TVs, they make it. If they don't, they don't. If they make things for cameras, they make things for cameras. I don't really care. Life insurance, whatever they do, I don't really care about that stuff. Sony, whatever. They could stop making TVs. I wouldn't even be like, oh my God, that sucks. I love Sony TVs. They're great now. Hell, one of my TVs is, Vizio or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Ultimately, Sony does more doing than they do talking, And right now, I think they know that the PlayStation brand is their number one brand, period, as a company, and they're going to do the job what they need to do. At this point, we don't have release dates for like the big games, Ghost of Tsushima. We don't have release dates for The Last of Us. We don't have release dates for Death Stranding. That doesn't mean that Sony is not working to get the release dates plus major media blitz campaign. And I think that's the key because the two games that had the huge media blitz campaign, SpiderMan and God of War, those games sold phenomenally. I mean, they both sold 3 million apiece worldwide in 3 days. That is incredible. That's beyond, anything Sony has done before. So I'm pretty sure they're going to do the same exact thing. They're going to give Last of Us 2 that complete media treatment. Death Stranding, that complete media treatment. The question now I have concerns, maybe Ghost of Tsushima. Will they do the same thing for that game? Consider it's a sucker punch game. Maybe, then maybe not. I hope they do, especially if they really want this game to be a big blockbuster game, part of their franchise, As far as Microsoft's doing their thing announcing studios, but just because Microsoft announces studios doesn't mean that Sony has to do the same thing. Microsoft has things to fix. They have to fix their own image. They have to fix their own brand. They have to go out there and destroy the narrative that they don't have studios to make game. That is why they're so vocal, despite the fact that they're announcing all these acquisitions, but they're not showing us anything. And within good reason. It's going to take time to show a product. It's going to take 2-3 years before they're able to show a trailer, and then another 2 years after before the game releases, But to me, that conversation is for next gen. Right here, right now, it's about Sony, and we're waiting for these release dates. And when they do release dates, it's going to be bigly. They're going to have the media blitz campaign, and we could potentially be playing another, set or at least one Game of the Year caliber game for 2019. We might even be able to play 2. Who knows, all right? But anyway, what you think about this video? Are you concerned about Sony's arrogance, or do you think it's a narrative that people are just creating? To be honest, I don't even know why they're creating, because in the end, they get egg on their face every time. But anyway, you let me know what you think. Hit up the comment section. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification. Everybody hit the like button if you joined the video. This is your boy, Puerto Rock 77, and I'm out of here. Peace.